Hello everyone, this is Voice of Manoj. In this video, I am back with the Sri Lankan poem The Fisherman Mourned by His Wife by Patrick Fernando. This video definitely helps you to get the idea to answer the questions based on this poem. So without further ado, let's get into the poem. First, I am going to tell something about the author, Patrick Fernando. Patrick Fernando was a Sri Lankan poet, born in 1931. He is best known for his poetry depicting the life, loves, and trials of the people in Sri Lanka, especially that portrayed in The Fisherman Mourned by His Wife, and he died in 1983. The introduction of the poem. The Fisherman Mourned by His Wife by Patrick Fernando is a six-stanza poem, each stanza of which rhymes in the same pattern of alternative every other line. There are a few half rhymes and mixed rhymes throughout that don't take away from the overall feeling of the poem. The lines in each stanza of the poem decrease in number as the poem proceeds. The Fisherman Mourned by His Wife begins with a narration of the mourning wife as she outlines their relationship. She speaks of the days past when the husband was. It is an elegy, a work which laments for the dead person in the melancholic tone. Patrick Fernando makes the fisherman's wife as a narrator of the poem and explains the emotional bond between the husband and wife in the first part of the poem and the emotional breakdown of the lady in the second part, and ends the poem with the emotional maturity of the fisherman's wife. Parallel to it, the writer brings in the changes of nature as symbolic reference to the poem, where it highlights the tragedy of the fisherman. Let's go for the original text.
Fisherman Mourned by His Wife by Patrick Fernando. When you were not quite 30 and the sun had not turned you into old board brown, when you were not quite 30 and had not begun to be embittered like the rest, no ground obsessed with death, then you would come caught with continuance upon the sea, chased as gull flying, pointed home, engaged to be with me. Now that being dead, you are beyond detection, and I need not be discreet. Let us confess I was not love that merit as no affection, but eldest persuasion, not even loneliness. Recall how first you were so impassioned and affect. My eyes were open in the dark, unlike in love. Trembling last in fear, you would let me go a maid. Trembling, on the other hand, for my virginity. 3 months the monsoon dressed the sea, and you remained at home. The sky cracked like a cell in thunder, and the rain broke through. At last, when boring chest and the storm winds fell, when gulls returns new plumed and white, when in our wind-torn, flamboyant new buds broke, I was with my face was worn while telling you, and voice fell low, and you seemed full of guilt and not to know whether to repent or rejoice over the situation. You nodded at the ground and went to sea. But soon I was to you more than God or temptation, and so were you to me. Men come and go. Some say they understand. Our children weep. The youngest think you are fast asleep. There is fear and wonder There is fear and wonderment. You had grown familiar as my hand, that I cannot with simple grief assuage dismemberment. Outside the wind, despoils of leaf, trees that it used to nurse. Once more, the flampoint is down, the sky cracks like a cell again. So, someone practical has gone to make them bring the curse before the rain.
Study questions. You can expect these types of questions based on this poem. How does Patrick Fernando, in his poem, The Fisherman Mourned by His Wife, express a young wife's lamentation on the unexpected death of her husband? Second question. How does Patrick Fernando, in his poem, The Fisherman Mourned by His Wife, express a strong feeling of sympathy for a young wife and her children due to her death? Explain. The poem Fisherman Mourned by His Wife, written by the Sri Lankan author Patrick Fernando, unfolds a life of fishing community in the island. Through this poem, the writer describes lamentation of the young wife over the death of her husband in the sea. This essay will focus how her grief is expressed in the poem. In this poem, Patrick Fernando describes the sudden death of a fisherman and the mentality of the widow wife effectively. In the institution of marriage, the woman got arranged marriage. Because of that, there were no love and affection between the couple at the beginning stage. It is evident in the below line. It was not love that married us, nor affection. Through this line, the writer brings out the typical attitude of arranged marriage in the community exactly. The employment of the technique flashback unfolds the mentality of the stranger when they get married together. Through the diction, no affection highlights there was no feeling from the heart. However, they were got married because of elders' persuasion. This diction strongly emphasizes how elders in the family plays a major role in the institution of marriage. Furthermore, the writer has created the sympathy from the reader's mind through the line, "Our children weep, the youngest think you are fast asleep." The above line shows the innocent kid who lost their father compared to elder kid. The youngest child is not mature enough to understand the reality. Through the diction youngest, the writer has used the superlative adjective to describe the immature level of the child. Further, the writer indirectly conveys the message that the widowed wife understands and accepts the reality, that the separation is a part of life. However, her children are not mature enough to accept the philosophy. It is similar to the character Rattan in the short story The Postmaster, where the innocent Rattan does not know the reality and gives the unconditional love towards the postmaster. Similarly, in this poem, the diction weep symbolically shows the unconditional love towards the father and towards the husband as well. Moreover, the dependency of a woman has been shown in the poem clearly. It is clear how the widow is helpless because of her husband's death. It is evident in the below line, "You had grown familiar as my hand." Through this line, a reader can understand how the woman attached deeply to her husband and her worries have been brought out through the line. The diction familiar indicates the strong bonding between the husband and wife. It is interesting that the woman did not have any affection or love at the time of the marriage. Further, the phrase "my hand" symbolically indicate the dependency. The speaker feels helpless without her husband clearly. It also creates the sympathy towards the widow wife in the poem. In closing, Sri Lankan author Patrick Fernando's poem, The Fisherman Mourned by His Wife, creates a strong feeling of sympathy towards widowed wife and her children because of the fate of fishing community in the island. In addition to that, the writer has employed the themes such as uncertainty of a fisherman's life at sea, fate of a fisherman's wife, institution of an arranged marriage. So I hope that you have an idea about the poem and now you are able to answer the questions based on this poem. If the video is useful to you, please support it. It will encourage me to upload more literary works in future. Thank you.